Good morning. Okay, this one works. Let me just make sure this other one works as well. Good morning. Okay, this one's got a little bit more trouble. How is everybody doing today? It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Olivia, for that wonderful introduction, and to Creative Mornings for having me here to speak. And thank you all for coming. It is ridiculously cold today. Just a quick story, super quick. My turntables here literally froze. That's never happened before. I left them in my car overnight, which I do all the time. When I set them up, they were not turning, but they seem to be fine now. So, but yes, so thank you for coming on this very cold day. And I'd like us to start with a quick warm-up exercise just to get us all focused and listening. And so my only request is that you close your eyes while you're doing it, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to repeat whatever you hear me doing, all right? With your eyes closed. Okay, starting now, so close your eyes. Just join in. Okay, excellent. You may open your eyes now. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up my slideshow here. So, we're gonna be talking about sound today. Sound, of course, involves hearing, which is one of our senses. And when we think about hearing, oftentimes we think of hearing in terms of providing us with information or safety, right? So for example, having the ability to hear things can sometimes even save your life, right? So for example, if you're about to cross the street and you hear traffic coming from one direction, you know to look to make sure that you're safe before crossing the street. And to this end, with children, oftentimes they are taught about sound in terms of identifying things, right? So for example, I remember as a child being asked questions like, what sound does a dog make, right? So for example, what sound does a dog make? Okay, very good. What sound does a cow make? Very good. What sound does a frog make? Very good. What sound does a cat make? Okay, so you all are probably feeling pretty good about yourselves right now, right? Okay. Now, how many of you have dogs? Okay. How many of you with dogs have dogs that make more sounds than just arf, arf? Right? Okay. How many of you have cats that make more sounds than meow? Right? Okay. So what I'm getting at here is that what we often teach children is a way of identifying objects or things by the sounds that they make. Which is very useful and very helpful, but it's not necessarily realistic, okay? And so one of the things that I try to do now is spend a lot of time sort of deconstructing sound and observing sound. And so what I hope for you today is that when you leave here, at least for the rest of the day, but hopefully going forward, that you'll think a little bit differently about the things that you hear, what is making those particular sounds, and how they affect you. Okay? So as Olivia shared with you, I do a number of different things with sound and music. My journey with sound actually started at a very young age. And I wanted to first start with this slide. Definition of sound. 1A, a particular auditory impression, a tone. B, the sensation perceived by the sense of hearing. C, mechanical radiant energy that is transmitted by longitudinal pressure waves in a material medium as air and is the objective cause of hearing. Okay. 4, meaningless noise. Right, so I read this, and when I got to 4, it really made me think. Meaningless noise. Who makes the decision that a noise has meaning or that it doesn't? Technically, whatever we hear is really a combination of multiple sounds, right? And it's very difficult for us to ascertain where the sound begins and where it ends. Now, that's me. Okay. So my relationship with sound, as I said, began at a very young age. I started playing the piano when I was about 3 years old. And one of the things that I enjoyed tremendously about it was it allowed me to focus my love for sound towards something very specific. So this is me playing in a concert. I was actually 6 years old here, and this is in Venezuela, where I lived at the time. And then this is me as an adult. So that's me as an adult playing a Mozart piano concerto. Piano was a huge part of my life from the time I was 3 years old up until my mid-30s, and then something happened. This was a concert that I played in Bolivia in 2003. And up to this point, I had studied very hard. Piano was really the focus of my life and career at that point, and I was expecting my career trajectory to just continue to improve. About a year after this, I went to Italy to perform, and I had some trouble during the performance, but I really didn't think about it that much. Sometimes when you practice or when you play a lot, some of you may know this, you may have muscular issues or you get a little bit sore or tired. And usually I would just take a break for a week or so, and then I'd be fine. So I came back from Italy and took about 2 weeks off, and then sat down to practice again, and something was not right with my left hand. And I wasn't really sure what the problem was, but I could tell that something wasn't right. And so I just decided to take another week off. Went back a week later, and the problem had actually gotten worse. And so I went to a doctor and was expecting him to tell me that I perhaps had something like a pinched nerve or a muscular problem. And I was given a diagnosis that I had developed a neurological disorder. The neurological disorder is called focal dystonia. What it does, it is your brain tries to send a signal to a particular body part, but your body part will not respond and will sometimes just decide to do its own thing. And in my particular case, it was my index finger, my left index finger that was affected. And so that began a steady decline in terms of my ability to play, because I was just hoping that it would just go away. And a steady increase in terms of tests. I had 2 operations. But ultimately, what the diagnosis said was that there was actually nothing wrong with my hand. It was my brain that was the issue. At this particular point in time, because of what was happening and because of my inability to play, I lost the desire Actually, not the desire. I just couldn't listen to classical music anymore. I couldn't listen to the piano because it was just too painful. And I would try to play, and it would just get worse and worse. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. And so my musical world, or the way that I related to sound, quickly became silenced. I stopped going to concerts. I wouldn't go and hear my friends play. I was living here at the time. I wouldn't go to the Baltimore Symphony. I really just stopped listening to classical music, and for a while became quite depressed. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my career. It was difficult to teach as well because I couldn't play. And so around 2007, so after about 2 years of this, I started to try to manipulate sound in a different manner just so that I wouldn't go crazy, and to give myself some sort of outlet. It wasn't an artistic outlet at all. It was just a way to get sort of the angst out and to feel like I was contributing something to my life or to the world sonically. And so in 2007, I had collected a series of just sort of, I wouldn't even necessarily call them beats, but just sort of sound pieces. And I put them together into an album, and decided to call the album Sound, actually. And the reason I called it that is because I had no sort of distinct agenda in terms of what I was recording. It was just things that were coming to me that would allow me to relate to the world around me. Notice that the title Sound also has a colon after it, as if it's to be followed by a definition. And I just want to play you a little bit of something from this album. Okay, so you can hear, it's really just sort of a collection of tones and sounds. There's no words, there's no chorus, there's no hook. But this is the sort of thing that I started to put together really just for my own purposes in order to cope with the situation that I felt I'd been dealt with. And coincidentally, there was a whole community of people that came across this album that loved it, and which completely surprised me. I didn't think that, I didn't expect that at all. But I started to sort of spend a little bit more time thinking about sound differently from how I thought of it up to the point where I had my injury. Up to that point, while I was certainly aware of sounds around me, my primary goal was to get as close as I possibly could to whatever the perfect performance of a classical piece was in my particular head, in terms of me interacting with music. With this, it was more a matter of trying to find things that simply resonated with my being or with my particular consciousness at that particular point in time. Okay, so around 2009, I decided to spend a little bit more time trying to figure out this neurological disorder that I had. There's no cure for it, but there is treatment that sometimes works. It had not worked for me. So what I decided to do was to try to essentially outsmart my brain. Right? Now, how do you outsmart your brain? Right? If you think about everything that you do, your brain is really sort of a step ahead of you. Right? By the time you're thinking about what your brain wants to do, it's already done it. But what I found was that if I started to play, instead of classical music, play experimental, improvised music, instead of focusing on recreating something, I could listen in my mind to what was coming next. And all of a sudden, I had more control over my finger. It wasn't cured by any means, but as opposed to feeling like I couldn't play at all, I felt like I regained suddenly about 30 or 40% of my ability because I was focusing on something that I was hearing ahead of time. So just to very quickly play a portion of this, if you look very closely, you may not be able to see it in this first section, but you can actually see my index finger of my left hand. I'm not using it at all. I'm simply extending it and trying to keep it straight, because what would happen is it would just involuntarily just curl under. Right? There was nothing I could do about it. So I'm not using it, but I'm struggling to keep it straight with quite a bit of success. Music like this, essentially what you're doing is you're having a conversation with the other musicians. And this takes me back to my initial question, or the definition about meaningful sound. This is not something that I would have necessarily found as meaningful when I was younger, because again, I was interested in recreating Mozart, Chopin, Rachmaninoff. Not really so much having a conversation with other musicians or with myself, essentially. And so doing this opened up a whole new sonic world and palette for me that hadn't really existed up to that point. We often hear people talk about, I know my mother, one of the things she used to say to me is, I know you can hear me, but you're not listening. Right? And so I just wouldn't have listened to this before. But once I started listening to it, I started to hear all of these other possibilities, and my mood started to improve. I started to come out of my funk and depression. I started to find value in going to performances more frequently. And my condition itself actually began to improve. In 2012, after spending about 3 years trying to retrain my brain and getting this issue to resolve, it had improved dramatically. And so I began to perform in a classical vein again, or something sort of a cross between the two. And I just wanted to play a little bit of this. This is a video of me performing Summertime by Porgy and Bess. A lot of people have seen this video, but they don't really know the story behind it. The first half of it, I played the entire thing with just my left hand, which was the hand that had been affected. Not only did I play it just with my left hand, but I only used 4 fingers. I purposely did not use the finger that had been affected. It was my sort of personal, FU to this thing that had, claimed these years of my life. And then in the second half, I play with all 10 fingers. So. So, thank you. Thank you. So one of the wonderful things about coming to this whole sort of other way of creating music and manipulating sound is that it's led me to all sorts of other wonderful opportunities. I had a love of hip hop since I was a very young child, but it wasn't until I couldn't really focus on classical piano anymore that I started to produce music in general, but then specifically hip hop and then other things as well. All of the music that you were listening to out in the lobby and that you were listening to when you came in, that's all my music. And I played every single note of every instrument that you were listening to. So the top right, that album is called Forthcoming. That came out in 2010. And then in 2014, I decided to embark on a very ambitious project and release the other three all on the same day. So, and the two that are on the left, those are the ones that we're actually playing out in the lobby today. And another project that I, as Olivia mentioned to you, have been very fortunate to be a part of is Out of the Blocks with my good friend and co-creator Aaron Henkin. One of the wonderful things about Out of the Blocks is that it allows me to combine my love of sound manipulation and of different genres of music, as well as photography. I do all the photography for that as well. But I wanted to just quickly show you, use this opportunity to show you a little bit of how I now make some of the music that you hear on that program. So this is a program called Ableton Live. It allows you to record audio as well as record what's called MIDI data, musical instrument digital interface, which then allows you to play multiple instruments or manipulate sound in a very unusual way if you know what you're doing. So this is audio from the Greektown episode. And if you listen to the episode, you can find them all on WYPR's website and stream it. You'll hear that this music accompanies a gentleman making a cup of coffee. Right? So this is like the most epic cup of coffee ever created. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this. Now, all of those instruments are done electronically. So, for example, what you were just watching as this was playing, those lines, that's what we call MIDI data. And so if I select any one of these lines, you can actually hear it as soon as I touch it. Right? I can even touch the keyboard, and you can hear it play. I've got different controllers. Right? So all of these pieces of equipment can be used to manipulate that particular sound, and there's multiple different instruments that you hear. Another little tidbit, those of you that are familiar with the show, is that all of the music for an episode, which is about an hour long, I usually compose and record in anywhere from 4 to 6 days. Right? So it's done very quickly. And a lot of my ability to do that is thanks to the musical training that I had as a classical musician. What I want to show you then is an excerpt from the show that actually has one of the subjects in it, so that you can hear how the sound is used to accentuate and enhance what you hear from the subject herself. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this without giving too much of an introduction.
Sometimes I feel like I just want to give up. That's it.
You seem like you've got a lot of stress and worry on your shoulders.
I have an awful lot. because I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me. I met this guy. We dated for 9 months. I got in an argument with him, and he left. And I did not know that this man was sick. This man did not tell me he was sick. So 2 nights ago, I thought I was taking my vitamin, which is in that bureau right there. And I grabbed the wrong pill, and I took it, and I got deathly sick. And I started throwing up and everything, and my daughter-in-law called up to find out what pill it was. And it's for HIV. I just want to go and get this test because I can't sleep at nighttime. I think about why did he do this to me? But I can understand why he's doing it because he must have had this for a long time because it's eating his brain up. I mean, I'm telling you, he don't remember anything. Now, I would get up in the morning, I'd fix him breakfast, and I'd bring it in, and I'd set it down. And he'd sit down there, and he'd look at the plate, and he'd say, "Where's my breakfast at?" His brain's gone. It's like he don't know what he's doing.
Do you think you'll ever see him again?
I'm praying I do, but I don't know. The only thing I know is this man, I do not want him to be by himself because I want to take care of this man. That's all I want. I just want this man to be in my life so I can take care of him. I don't want him to die and me not being taken care of.
It's amazing to hear you talk about how much you want to take care of him, even though for everything that he's put you through.
I want to take care of him. I love him. I mean, if I do got it, there's nothing I can do about it. But I don't want that man to die knowing that I didn't help him. I just really don't want him to die. That's it. He'll be back. I know he'll be back. So, I'm just gonna let it go at that.
So, one of the things that I love about that show is that I feel as though I'm entrusted with a certain amount of responsibility in terms of how sound is used. You could hear with that, it began without any music, but the music swelled underneath it, and then just provided a backdrop for her to tell her story. But imagine what that would sound like without the music. It would still be compelling, but it wouldn't necessarily resonate in the same manner. Okay, well, so in closing, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful to have been given a second opportunity in life to continue to create in a manner that I had very much fallen in love with and to continue my relationship with sound. And I feel very fortunate to have been able to regain the abilities, or most of the abilities that I had lost initially, so that now my relationship with sound is immeasurably broader than it was when I was younger. And so just keep that in mind. As you go out today and as you walk around, you probably will hear many of the sounds that you typically hear. But maybe just stop and take a moment to really listen, right? To go beyond actually hearing them and listen. And you may be surprised with how you're affected. So thank you very much.